Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. The 76th day of the Russian invasion of Ukraine has passed. This morning, the Ukrainian General Staff reported that 15 hostile attacks have been repelled in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. In turn, Odessa, an important port of Ukraine on the Black Sea, and the Odessa Oblast were again attacked with Onyx cruise missiles launched from annexed Crimea. United States President Joe Biden signed the $33 billion Lend-Lease bill for Ukraine, as previously announced. During the past 24 hours, Russian forces have carried out 34 raids on the Azovstal plant, 8 with the use of strategic bombers. According to estimates, there are still over 100 civilians on the site of the plant. The area around Kiev was also shelled. Rockets hit Odessa 3 times, where Charles Michel, President of the European Council, was on a working visit at the time. For the first time in many decades, there is no normal movement of the merchant fleet in Odessa. There is no normal operation of the port. Most likely, such a situation has not taken place since the Second World War. This is a blow not only for Ukraine. Without our agricultural exports, dozens of countries in various parts of the world are already on the brink of food shortages. And over time, things can get even worse. This is a direct consequence of Russian aggression. We can overcome this together by uniting Europe and the entire free world. We can overcome this by putting pressure on Russia, by efficiently forcing it to end this heinous war. Another missile strike against Odessa was carried out. This time 7 missiles were launched. However, we have the impression that they were outdated missiles, probably made back in the Soviet times. Our opponent is probably running out of ammunition. Civilian bombings, remote from military infrastructure, were struck. A shopping mall and a warehouse were hit. Unfortunately, there are fatalities among the people in the warehouse. 3 workers at the mall were injured. The Ukrainian armed forces recaptured the village of Biohorivka and destroyed Russian pontoon bridges over the Donets River. Since the beginning of the invasion of Ukraine, Russia has already lost almost 26,000 soldiers, 1,170 tanks, 199 aircraft, and 94 cruise missiles. United States President Joe Biden signed the Lend-Lease Act to facilitate the shipment of arms and military equipment to Ukraine and NATO's eastern flank countries, and called on Congress to approve the aid application for Kiev.
I'm signing a bill that provides another important tool in our efforts to support the government of Ukraine and the Ukrainian people in their fight to defend their country and their democracy against Putin's brutal war. And it is brutal. I want to thank members of Congress here for getting this passed and everyone who supported the bill. And the bill demonstrates the support for Ukraine is pivotal at this moment. Every day, Ukrainians pay with their lives, and they fight along the atrocities that the Russians are engaging in are just beyond the pale. And the cost of the fight is not cheap, but caving to aggression is even more costly. That's why we're staying in this.
For the first time since the 24th of February, a representative of the government of the Federal Republic of Germany travelled to Kiev. The head of the Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Annalena Baerbock, visited Bucha and met the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dimitri Kuleba. She was accompanied by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands, Wopke Hoekstra. Here you can clearly feel that each of us can be such a victim. Bucha is as a suburb of Kiev is like Potsdam for Berlin. There are playgrounds, supermarkets, people usually go to work, and right next to it you can see the traces of the worst crimes. In this church there are pictures of people who did what every human being did. Got up in the morning, did their job, and then they were killed in cold blood. We will support the investigation of war crimes and ensure that the perpetrators are brought to justice. We owe it to the victims. The Japanese government has decided to extend the sanctions imposed on Russia for its aggression against Ukraine. Meanwhile, yesterday in Paris, as a sign of solidarity with Kiev, the Eiffel Tower was illuminated in the colours of the Ukrainian flag, and in Berlin, the Brandenburg Gate also. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki presented details of the plan to support mortgage borrowers. The solutions are to be the government's response to growing loan instalments. They include, among others, a reduction in the value of liabilities and an increase in expenditure on the Borrower Support Fund by almost 1.5 billion zloty. The new regulations will change the provisions of the Act on crowdfunding for business ventures. The changes consist of 3 basic elements: credit holidays, a new loan interest rate, and an increase in the budget of the Borrower Support Fund. We move this money from the banks to the citizens, and it is in the banks' interest that citizens survive this crisis as well as possible. So in the end, it is not against the interests of the banks. This is against the short-sighted, selfish interest of banks and financial institutions, but it is not against the long-term interests of the entire economy, of which banks are part. Credit holidays are to allow the repayment of the obligation for 4 months without additional interest in 2022 and 2023. They apply to loans denominated in zloty. On the other hand, the resignation from WIBOR, i.e. the loan instalments calculation ratio, would bring the portfolios of Polish consumers about 1 billion zloty from 2023. We will ensure the FWK, which currently amounts to 600 million zloty, will be increased to 2 billion zloty, and this is the pool to be used even this year. For the next year, it will be at least 2 billion zloty. This too is a cost to be borne by the banking sector. In order to receive support from the Borrower Support Fund, one of the following 3 conditions must be met. A person must have the status of unemployed by at least one of the borrowers, monthly housing loan servicing costs exceed 50% of monthly income, or when the monthly income after deducting the cost of loans does not exceed the specified amount of 1,552 zloty for a single-person household and 1,200 zloty per person for a multi-person household. Today we are submitting this project for wide consultation. We want all stakeholders to participate in it, in order to ensure that, in addition to helping the citizens, also to ensure the stability of the financial and banking sector. Grzegorz Szczechodrowski from the Department of Economic Policy at the University of Gdansk expresses his concern that proposals will not be accepted by the banking sector. I'm telling you, it is not something that is enough to explain. The banks willingly admit that they are right, and they will say, of course, without any conditions, we increase. Economist Professor Zbigniew Krzysiak points out that the current WIBOR did not reflect the cost of financing mortgage loans. This new reference could possibly have a lower interest rate, 1%, even 1.5%, maybe even 2%. Applications to the Borrower Support Fund may be submitted now. A new feature is online submission of applications. Prince Charles delivered the traditional speech from the throne at the state opening of Parliament for the first time. Queen Elizabeth II had to entrust him with this duty due to her health condition and doctors' recommendations. It's the first time since 1963 that Queen Elizabeth did not deliver the speech herself.
My Lords and members of the House of Commons, Her Majesty's government's priority is to grow and strengthen the economy and help ease the cost of living for families. Her Majesty's government will level up opportunity in all parts of the country and support more people into work. Her Majesty's ministers will continue to support the police to make the streets safer and fund the National Health Service to reduce the COVID backlogs. In these challenging times, Her Majesty's government will play a leading role in defending democracy and freedom across the world.
Every year, Queen Elizabeth II puts on the robe of state before leading a procession to the House of Lords' upper chamber, where she sits on a throne and formally opens a new session of Parliament, reading a speech outlining the government's legislative plans. She has missed the occasion twice during her 70-year reign, in 1959 and 1963, when she was pregnant with sons Andrew and Edward. For the residents of the UK, it was a significant change when a throne speech indicating the most important directions of the country's policy was delivered in her place by Prince Charles. In the speech read out by the Prince, it was emphasized that the priority for Great Britain this year would be the economy. He also made a promise to ensure the security of citizens. He highlighted a healthcare backlog following the COVID-19 pandemic. He also mentioned the issue of border protection, migration, and of course the war in Ukraine. He mentioned the importance of military and humanitarian support for Kiev and declared its continuation.
That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business, and more programs. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.